We need to figure out, what are they telling us right now about how we're acting or behaving or what we did and what we could be doing better, right? The hard part is when we get stuck. When we get stuck in one of these emotions for a prolonged period of time, it can't get out, right? When you're in that, and I've experienced, when, I dramatically screw something up, and my wife's all upset and my kid's upset, and I'm just, I go into this shame spiral. Okay, like, yeah, like that was a lot of that's on me. I got to take responsibility for what I did wrong in that moment. All right. So, okay, I'm in that place of like, man, I really effed up and I'm down on myself and I could feel that anger rising and bubbling up.
Are you tired of working more for less profits in your home service business? What if I could show you $100,000 in hidden annual profits in your business in less than 3 minutes? Would you be interested? And not only show you where, but how to create that 100K in 6 months or less without additional advertising or marketing spend guaranteed. Just go to sharpenthespearcoaching.com to see how truly simple it is. That's sharpenthespearcoaching.com. Do it now.
And welcome back to STS, Sharpen the Spear podcast. Another incredible guest with us today. We've got Jeff Siegel. Jeff's going to tell us all about Jeff because no one knows Jeff better than Jeff. And that's how we do it around here. So, Jeff, welcome to the show. Welcome to Sharpen the Spear. Give us a little backstory. Bring us up to speed. Let us know who you are, what you do, and then we are going to get into it.
Richard, I appreciate the invitation to introduce myself. I help dedicated dads develop a balanced lifestyle and rebuild confidence in their bodies so they can be more present at home, so they can excel at work, so they can feel at peace, and proud of who they are when they wake up in the morning and look at themselves in the mirror, and not have one of those moments of looking at their own reflection and being like, oh my God, how did things fall apart? How did things get to this point with regards to maybe their health, their body, their eating, and then everything that's downstream of that, right? Just how they're showing up in their lives as a man. And this all began with really my own journey, right? In trying to figure out how to take better care of myself, which started really when I was a teenager and I had an eating disorder. And that kicked things off. My mind and my body were just completely at odds, at war with each other. And I was completely internally torn apart. One part of me wanted to be a healthy, normal teenager. Another part of me had all these rules about what I could and couldn't eat, trying to control everything going into my body, playing all these games, and, really just destroyed my health. I had to drop out of high school for a while. I was in a hospital program. And so that was kind of the low point, especially as a teen, not fully understanding exactly what was going on, but obviously having enough clarity to recognize that like it was serious. And then from that point forward, I learned everything I could about, physical health and mental health. I studied psychology, I studied neuroscience, I studied biology, and I really tried to bring all these things together. And that's kind of led me on the journey that I am, working today as a men's coach, helping guys with their health and wellness.
That's awesome. I am excited for this conversation because I think from the male perspective, really, like when you talk about an eating disorder, because I've dealt with this stuff as well, but as a teenager, a lot of people like what, they expect girls to deal with eating disorders and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if you struggle with body dysmorphia, stuff like that too. There's that level, right? That also contributes to that kind of stuff. And then, like you said, the psychological aspects of the never good enough, not perfect enough, can do more, can't do, man, this is going to be awesome. Just like we're on the same page here. I want to kind of dive in the beginning, when you begin to overcome this, like, how did you recognize as a teenager that aside from maybe having to go to the hospital, right, that the issue was there? Did you know it pre getting out of high school, having to take the break, go to the hospital, that kind of stuff? Like, what was some of the warning signs? I guess that's what let's start with that. What are some warning signs for that?
Yeah. I think we've all had that moment in our lives where, we're doing something that we've done before, but there's this little part of us that's just like, why are we doing this? Like, this doesn't make any sense. This is actually the exact thing that I don't want to be doing, right? Whether that's regard to like eating something that we know we shouldn't be eating, right? Or just like repeating some behavior, like yelling, losing our patience, like looking at, porn, or like, any of the number of things that we might do. So like, I think for me as a teenager, I knew that there was something that was off. Like, when all of my guy friends were like, yo, let's go get some cheesesteaks for lunch, right? And like, I just felt completely paralyzed, like unable. I was like, I can't do that, right? Like like you guys go get lunch, but like, I'm gonna do something over here, cause I don't want to eat anything, or, I was afraid to go out and eat. So like, it was pretty clear to me that like something was not clicking and not quite right. Right. And it, and I think this shows up in different ways at different stages in your life, right? When you're a teen, so much of your life is about peer acceptance and belonging. So for me, that contrast of like what all my friends were doing and what I was doing was really that, as you said, sort of that warning sign or that flag for me that, yeah, like things were heading in a weird direction, but I think at different points in your life, you're going to have different ways of getting that flag back to you, right? Like if you're in a marriage, like your partner is probably going to be the one waving the flag, being like, hey, this thing again. Or maybe it's your kids, right? Your kids are incredible mirrors of all the ways in which maybe you are not showing up with integrity. And so I think, also the value of having good friends that are willing to maybe tell you the truth about what's going on in your life, or having a coach or a mentor or elders, right? I mean, I think these are all really important parts of living a good life, is making sure you have people there that are willing to actually reflect that back to you and do so in a supportive way. We're not, obviously that's the hard thing about being a teenager, is like your friends might think that, you're on the wrong path, but there's not a whole lot of tact about it, right? They're like, Jeff, like, well, WTF, like, you crazy, right? Like, there's not necessarily the same wisdom and compassion as you could get when you're a little bit older.
Yeah, I agree. I think as a teenager, well, normally in, I'll call it regular society, you're just surrounded by other people your age who don't know anything either. So they're all kind of like, it's the blind leading the blind, really, so they may see something, but they're not going to really give you the wisdom. Like I like what you said, and we teach this, and I taught this to my kids, the same thing, is we're always looking at our circle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I always encourage them, we want to know people of different ages. Well, we homeschool all our kids. So we also had that opportunity to be around all different age kids. I have 6 kids. So that was able to interact with other people, but also with adults and everything else. They got real comfortable with that. Because the insight from a parental standpoint too is, yeah, your kids listen, but they don't really listen because you're their parents. They're too familiar,
Yeah.
right? And I always say more is caught than taught, right? So like you said, they watch what your parents do. Your kids watch what you do. They don't listen to what you do. They watch what you do. So they see the fruit, not the words. Hey, you should be like this and that. But if you're not being that way, like you said, it's not congruent to them, right? So a lot of times these kids can't get those outside eyes, to see the directions they're going, or you need that third person validation, right? Because you're your parents, you can see your child is off in some way. You see their eating patterns change, and not necessarily for the better, things like that. But then you're telling them, but they're not hearing it.
Yeah.
Right. So you kind of get that. So that's where you need to bring in and I don't mean the outside experts like, hey, let's get a slew of, psychologists to come and talk to my kid. I mean, people, who are at different stages of their life, or maybe had been through it, have gone through it. Right. So I don't know how you address that stuff. And I don't know if you even work with teenagers at that age. I know as adults, you just got those issues usually compounded. Right. So there's like way more layers to the onion when they're 35 or 45 than there is when they're 15. But it's an interesting thing that you're saying. Kind of take me down that road a little bit. So let's go, we get the insecurities as a teenager, right? And that's going to compile and make all kinds of different things happen. Like I'll tell you with me, Jeff, I'm a cross country runner, right? The biggest cross country runner you've ever seen. Okay. I'm like, what at the time? 6'2", 180, 190 pounds, running the 3 mile, killing it. I was really good. I could run. But I had a coach, okay, who was obsessed with weight. You're too big. You're too big. You're too big. So I went from like 190 down to 157. Okay. And
Wow.
and he's, you know what he said? You're still the heaviest guy on the team.
Right. Yeah. Not enough. Keep
That
going.
like it's all that mattered. I'm like, I'm in top 5. I go to state. I'm like, that kind of stuff. Like I think of that now, and there's all kinds of stuff that happened. Like, dang, dude, I was eating like 2 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and some rice every day, and running like 10 miles and stuff. So it's just that thing. And you get this coach who's this great coach and all this kind of stuff. We were a really good team, but you're influenced by that too. That takes in that direction. It was never good enough. So there's so many outside forces that it can affect you, right? So here's finally I'm getting to the question. Okay. So the question
There's
is
so
like,
many different right now that we could
I know
pick
that it's so many, there's so many. So
with something,
so
and then
let's
I'll take it.
yeah, let's go how do you so the challenge is to overcome the outside input. Everything that's coming in from you, all the comparison and this and a coach and all this kind of stuff. And whether you're a teenager or even older in life, you got the same thing, especially now with social media and everything else. How are you helping people like navigate that? What does that look like in this part of the journey?
Yeah. And, I don't know if it's so much overcoming all of the outside input. As you said, like most of that just happens unconsciously, and we don't really have a whole lot of choice in it, especially at younger ages. Like I like what you said, right? More is caught than taught. Or maybe you've heard, right, the idea that, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And so we're constantly absorbing things, right? Whether we're consciously taking them in or unconsciously, they're there in our surroundings. So I think the real challenge is then to pause and to be able to then reflect back and ask ourselves, okay, of all the things that I've absorbed, like, how are they influencing my behavior right now, right? What are the beliefs that they have led to that then are driving me to do, this thing or that thing? And then, is this serving me, right? And so we sort through them and we begin to integrate all of the things that we absorb, right? We take the pieces that we want that are helpful. We discard the stuff that is not helpful or maybe was never really ours to begin with. Spending a lot of time with my mom, and my mom had so many issues with her body. She had so much body dissatisfaction and all sorts of weird eating things. And, I absorbed a lot of that. But as a teen, I didn't really, I didn't understand that was her stuff that I was taking on for all sorts of reasons that, maybe I could help her, release her suffering or solve her problems for her, or maybe, they were my problems too. So, beginning to differentiate all of that stuff, right? Like this deep, deep inner work that I help guys go through, because you need to sift through all that stuff to then build new stories that are going to empower you to become the man that you want to become.
Yeah, that's good. You're right. I mean, again, we're affected by those around us. Same thing. I had a mother, very similar, right? Same kind of issue, a lot of issues, tons of issues, and they do get dumped on you. You're going to pick this up because of proximity. Proximity is that thing. Like you said, the 5 around you, they reflect what you make and earn and do, and all that kind of stuff is very similar. So I think that the ability to stop and look at that, this is really, we're kind of talking about emotional intelligence, right? Kind of the whole EQ thing. Is that part of what you do as well for helping guys?
Yeah. I mean, I think emotional intelligence, which started many decades ago, was really a breakthrough and just helping us begin to take more of a holistic view of what does it mean to be an intelligent, wise, mature person, right? And it's not just how many math problems you can solve or, what your intellect can do, right? There's a heart component to it. There's a social component to it. There's a relational component. So I think, building your emotional intelligence is key. And for men, this can be tricky. So I know for myself as a guy, like showing weakness made me feel unmanly. Right? Especially when you're with a group of other guys, the last thing you want to appear is, and I know both of us did a lot of martial arts growing up, right? I did karate and grappling and Muay Thai and MMA, and it's like, it's like you want to show, like, display strength, right? Like, don't show weakness, especially if you're in the sparring ring or fighting someone. But, all that stuff trickles out, right, into the society in general. And I think just developing your emotional literacy, And again, this is, I think, probably something a lot of guys can relate to, where it's like either I'm like sad, mad, right? Like hungry or tired, and then mixed in there is like little bits of shame that I don't really want to acknowledge. So I push the shame away with some more food and drinking and other stuff, right? But it's like, hey, like there is a lot more emotions to have, and all of them are here to tell us something. So that's another perspective that I think is important. It's like we don't want to push them away, even the ones that are really hard to deal with, right? Like, the anger, the shame. We need to figure out, what are they telling us right now about how we're acting or behaving or what we did and what we could be doing better, right? The hard part is when we get stuck. When we get stuck in one of these emotions for a prolonged period of time, we can't get out, right? When you're in that, and I've experienced, when, I dramatically screw something up, and my wife's all upset and my kid's upset, and I'm just, I go into this shame spiral. Okay, like, yeah, like that was, a lot of that's on me. I got to take responsibility for what I did wrong in that moment. All right. So, okay, I'm in that place of like, man, I really effed up and I'm down on myself and I could feel that anger rising and bubbling up. But learning how to handle and manage that productively so I don't stay stuck there in this disempowered place, just beating myself up, right? Like, again, I'm sure a lot of guys can, relate to that inner critic, that person just standing there with the whip behind them saying, right? And it just comes from ourselves in a way that often we're not even fully aware of how much we beat ourselves up, And, if somebody else were there telling us all these things, like, we would hate that person. And yet we do it to ourselves all the time.
Right. Yeah, so true. I remember, I was doing hypnotherapy, like trying to fix myself, not myself, but getting help, and so I had this therapist, great guy, this is post-boxing, martial arts, all this stuff, right? And he goes, well, people with mother issues, you'll find if you talk to most all boxers, he goes, they have some serious mother issues. I go, oh, really? Why is that? He goes, because you don't get a fair fight with your mother. He goes, you get in the ring, there's rules. It's two guys, you against one other person, you get to fight, there's rules. You can win, you can lose, right? You can do both. And I'm telling you, Jeff, like him telling me that, I'm like, dang, that's spot on. Because you do, like you can't, what are you going to do? Box your mother? Like you're not going to do anything. You're just going to be subjected to that kind of stuff. So that's why the emotional intelligence stuff is really unique in the way of addressing so many things. Like you said, there's hard things to deal with. There's also like, well, I come home, I go in the front door and I open the fridge and I look to see what's here. Well, why? That's emotional intelligence too. Why do I do this every day? Have I been famished for like 5 hours, like I'm going to die or something? Like you're not, right? It's like you ate like 3 hours ago or whatever, but it's those little kind of things that you start to track and adjust. Because I forget who I was having a conversation with just the other day. It was about the intentionality of turning things around. Like if you had things in your life that happened to you, your parents are this way or that way, or a brother or whatever it is, whatever the trauma was, and now you've started a family, well, there's only one thing you can do, and that's to be intentional not to do that. Yeah. Right? So, like, I had to do a lot of that. I have to do different things. Yeah, actually, I think I was telling one of my kids this, but I'm like, have I ever done this? I've never done that, right? And I've never done this. So, like, right? I go, well, I only didn't do that because I made myself not do that. I had to focus on it, right? Same thing with working out or eating. Like you said, the nutrition and the working out, for me, is that's a double-edged sword. Because I love to work out, and that's really good, but you can't out-train a bad diet. Nope. So now you're eating and you're trying to justify workouts with the food. Yep. And then it doesn't work, but you do it anyways. And then it's just this, then there's the guilt on top of the poor eating. Like even if you eat good, you also eat crappy. I'm a master of that, okay? The only thing I prioritize is the good stuff in first, and then stack the crappy stuff. So it's a bad plan.
And so, like, I love, Rich, I love the way you're stating it because again, it's something that I've experienced. So many guys probably feel the same way when it comes to, training and nutrition. And it really brings up this question, right? What drives someone to keep making the same health choices, even if they aren't working, right? And this question is so vital and really lies at the center of the coaching that I do. And, there's a nice model that I like to use. It's about, waking up, growing up, cleaning up, and showing up. Right. So for the example of the, it's like, why do you go in home, open the fridge and look for some food, even though you just ate an hour ago and you know that you don't need to eat. Right. So it's like the waking up is actually having that realization, that insight, that aha moment of like, wait a second, like this actually doesn't make sense. You begin to see it from another perspective. And sometimes, as we've talked about a moment ago, right, you need a coach, you need a friend, you need a partner, you need somebody else to wake you up to that reality of like, whoa, like I don't need to be doing it this way. There are actually other possibilities here. And then other things that are helpful for that, like meditation and journaling, and even just reading and exposing yourself to new ideas, right, is going to help you maybe see it in a different light. But then you got to go into the part of cleaning up, which is what we're just talking about. And I know you mentioned kind of some of the traumas and, the baggage that we're bringing with us from our past is influencing all the present moment behavior. So all that stuff we absorb, right, as kids or even older as adults, right, like that's showing up in that moment. So we need to go back and we need to sort through, again, integrate. We need to, right, like take the good, get rid of the not so good, find a new way to hold it all together. And that can help us then grow up, right? And I know so much of the work that you do, like helping entrepreneurs, helping men grow into, these, strong, like honorable, and successful versions of themselves. Which is then in service of showing up, right? Like in each moment, how are you showing up, right? And there's always this sort of, even if nobody's watching, those are the moments that matter the most, because when you think nobody's watching, right, then you're most likely to, kind of devolve to those lowest levels. So it's like how you show up in the moments when nobody is watching says so much about kind of who you are.
Yeah, that's a character definition. Doing it when no one's looking, what do you do then? So here's another little twist on what you're saying too. So you eat well, you have something that works really well. Let's call it tracking your macros. Okay, you get your workouts to tracking your macros. You're doing that for people to know that's just proteins, carbs, and fats in general, right? Mm-hmm. So you're doing that, and it works really good. And you lean out, and you're doing awesome, and you're going really good, and then you stop. And you go back to, so it's always this, hey, I did this for 6 months. It did really well. This is amazing. This works. And I tell people, like, in general, every diet works. But what happens when you stop? It's always about, I took this pill. It works great until I stop taking the pill. Then what happens? Right? So it's that. And this is what you're talking about. And what I had mentioned, it's kind of EQ, right? Emotional intelligence. Like, well, why can you sustain like a really healthy, energy-filled, nutrition, workouts, everything's going good. And then in 6 months, like it breaks. And then you're off there, or you just say you're going to, hey, I'm just going to eat this, which is followed by eating that and eating this, right? And you kind of go down the slippery slope and it's all flipped around, right? So I'm going to give you my interpretation. Basically what you've done is you've disciplined yourself for a period of time, but you've never addressed the issue. Okay, of why you're in this position anyways. So as soon as you step out, you're back in the issue that caused this, right? You can take these temporary departures from bad habits or whatever it is in a bubble of discipline, right? Where you're like, I can do every day. I'm tracking, I'm working out, I'm drinking my water, I'm logging everything into the app, you're doing all this stuff, and then, it just goes away. So, like, what's your interpretation of that? Is that you haven't finished the work, or you're ignoring the work? You're just going to a thing as a distraction almost? Is that macros and this and the what? That's like a distraction from the actual issues, right?
I wouldn't say it's a distraction. I think it can be one crucial piece of the story. But the problem is when we become hyper-focused on just one piece, especially some external piece, as you're putting it, and ignoring what's going on internally, then we're missing a whole lot of the story. And eventually that's going to catch back up to us. And I think that, you think about like what makes humans, right, so incredibly smart as a species. And like, our genius is that we are constantly adapting, right, our inside worlds, our thoughts and beliefs, right, to the outside environment that's always changing. So these two things are always shifting, inside and outside. And that's the very definition of homeostasis, right? Is like this dynamic stability of our body in the face of these like constantly changing environment. right? And so what we need to do, though, is address both the inside and the outside. And I find that it happens often, things fall apart when we just do one without the other, right? To your point of like, all right, we track our macros and we're really good about logging all our food and following our workout plan. So like we've like really focused on the outside piece, but we've ignored what's going on inside. And at some point, all that old baggage, right? You haven't done the cleaning up work, right? All those limiting beliefs, all that stuff that you're carrying, right, is going to show back up and say, oh, wait, and it's going to, bump you off the program that you were on. Or what also happens, though, I find that some people are like, they find a way of eating and exercising and it works for a certain period of time, right? And that could be, years, but then inevitably something changes, right? So now the external world is changing, right? Your body is getting older. Maybe you have a family and have kids. You move to a different part of the country. You start a different job. Your activity levels change. Your schedule changes. But they keep eating the same way that they were eating because it worked for them 10 years ago. And now all of a sudden it's not working anymore. And they're saying, wait, what's going on? This used to work, but no, right? So like they haven't gone through that process of updating the insides to match the outsides. And so I'm constantly working with people is like, how do we adjust both of these levers at the same time? Because as I said, doing one without the other is always going to be partial and incomplete.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's exactly that. It's really marrying the two, that they have to work together. It's like, well, I'll put in they're workout partners. So like workout partners, right? You can't just go run hard, right? Work out hard, hit the gym and do all that, but not address the other stuff because you're not completing the workout, right? We always need that partner to push you, that coach to push you. And in this way, if you're not dealing with the emotional aspect, the stuff that's inside you, and you're just going harder in the workouts. And what I mean by that is I'm like super intense in my workouts. I just really, really intense.
I'm imagining you. I would really work out together.
Yeah, and it's and I'm like, it's just all, and then you know what it is, Jeff? It really is stuff that's inside is coming out.
Yeah.
Like I'm working the heavy bag right now. I'm not young anymore, and I rock that sucker for 8 to 10 rounds a day, 3-minute rounds. Like I go hard. Every shot is hard, and I throw a lot of punches. I'm not some lazy heavyweight man. I work, and I'm like, and I get done. I feel so good, but I'm like, that bag's an opponent. Every time it's an opponent. It's not an inanimate object. It's an opponent. So I start to think about like what we're talking about here. I'm always like, well, I think there's something unfinished. It's like
there is unfinished business working its way out through you in those punches. And I'll say, you know what? And that's okay. In fact, the fact that you have an outlet to channel that energy right into something productive and healthy, right? It's not like you're just out on the street or at a bar picking fights with people, right? It's not like you're getting belligerent at home with your family. It's like, no, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to let that energy move through me. So as a self-care activity, I think this is crucial. And again, especially for men, we have a lot of this energy. We have a lot of power. We have a lot of physical power, right? As a result of just our biology. And yet we often don't know where to place it, right? Society doesn't give us a lot of outlets for that energy. And so it kind of gets bottled up. It gets repressed. A lot of times we flip it back on ourselves, as we've talked about, right? And we're throwing the punches, beating ourselves up. Or it comes out in these crazy ways. And, that's not good either. So I do think there's a really important place. And that, again, for fitness, for me, has always been a good spot for me to get intense, to let out that energy, to get in touch with that raw, wild man inside and let that run. It's cathartic and healing. And I'll say that like, I need to also be aware of that. I think my wife basically refused to stop working out with me because she was like, Jeff, you're too intense, right? Like, she's like, I can't handle it. We used to try to like do, early on in our relationship, we used to try to do workouts together and like, it just never really worked very well. And I tried, and there's all sorts of reasons for that. But, part of that is me on my journey is learning to be a little bit more gentle, right? And just like recognizing when is the time for me to push? Like, when am I going to go all in, right? And like find that edge. And when am I in here a little more gentle? I just like kind of like working the energy. And I think some of that comes with, and I'd love to hear your perspective on how your training has changed year over year, decade over decade, right? But as your body gets changes, right, it's like not every single workout can be this crazy sort of thing. It just like becomes too unsustainable.
Yeah, I agree. It's really fascinating. It's funny. You talk about the intensity and my wife and I never work out. I think we did Taekwondo. She lasted about a week. And then she was out 2.5 years later. I'm a first degree black belt. I'm going 5 days a week and I'm a little nutty, but boxing too with my kids, because there's all these treadmills. I'm at the Y. I'm rocking the band. They're like, Dad, people are like videotaping you. Yeah. I'm like, well, good for them. As long as they don't talk to me, I'm fine. Yeah, they can videotape all they want, but my kids see it, you know what I mean? Like this intensity. And my son now is in the Marine Corps, and I trained him through cross country, track, junior Olympics, boxing. He wanted to box, and now he's in the Corps. So he's kind of got that, that kind of hardcore mindset. But you're right, over time, it's not necessarily that I don't want to say it's not that our bodies don't change. I said, you're different places in your life. So the priority changes that can definitely have an effect, right? And I'll give you an example. Yesterday was a Marine Corps birthday. Okay, I know, this will be coming out long after this, and I'm a Marine, got some buddies in Marines, another one in the Navy.
Yeah.
So my buddy Matt's like, hey, I'm going to do a 10-mile ruck for the birthday. I go, well, you're going to have a good time without me, but I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll meet you at the 7-mile mark, and we'll take it to my house because it's 10 from his to mine. So me and another buddy, we met him at 3 and we, did that 3 miles coming back. He had 50 pounds on his back. Okay. I had like next to nothing. Okay. Got my pack and stuff. Wasn't a lot of that. And I'm going, I've been boxing, doing all that stuff, but dude, it's very hilly. We were doing the thing, got back. Now he did the whole thing in like 2 hours and 55 minutes, which is really moving with 50 pounds. He's moving. He had some blisters, but he doesn't ruck all the time. But he's also almost half my age.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give you that. So we kind of finished, but that was a challenge. It didn't kill me, but I was bringing up the rear. Okay. He's carrying the flag the whole way, 50-pound flag. He's got the Marine Corps flag he's carrying the whole way. We're doing that stuff, but it's that you're at different places. Now, if he came and tried to work the bag with me, he'd be toast in 3 rounds. Okay. That's the difference, right? It's what we do. Kind of on the regular. Like hitting the bag, I'll do at least 3 really hard days a week. Then in between, I'll do like a shadow box workout. So I'll do 8 or 10 of like all footwork and move, and I'll throw 350 punches around. Really work. It just is lather, but it's different. And on other days, so I think what you have to do over time is adjust the workouts, right? And it's not sort of the intensity, it's the duration and volume. Right, that you're doing. I think we always need to have that intensity in something, but maybe instead of an hour, I'm at 35 minutes. Instead of, trying to, deadlift, 400, I'm doing 2.25, with perfect form. You know what I mean? That kind of stuff. So I've always tried to adapt my workouts to really kind of fit where I'm at in the journey.
Yeah. And I think that's smart, and it goes back to the same thing I was saying around people, having a hard time adapting their diet to fit where they're at, right, in their current lifestyle, right? Because in the same way when you're training, you want to adjust the knobs of intensity, duration, recovery, right? But in terms of your food, you got to do the same thing in terms of, what are your overall calorie intake, how many meals you have in, how much time are you giving your digestion? Maybe there's some things that you used to eat a lot of that your system isn't so happy with anymore, right? And maybe there's a couple of exercises that for whatever reason, right? Joints aren't so friendly to that. You got to adjust, but then also find those edges where you can keep pushing. Like you said, I'm very much like a use it or lose it. And I think, it's staying active as long as possible is so important. So I'm so happy that, you still push yourself to get out there and to do these things. But my question though is where does your motivation come from? Or is at this point, it is just so ingrained in your identity that you don't even think about it, right? Because I find that for so many guys, their relationship with exercise or the gym is sort of a similar roller coaster of they're on it, right? They're in it for months or a year and then they're off it, right? But the guys that you see that just are in incredible shape for so long, it's just that have that dogmatic consistency. And for me, I always say is consistency actually is way more important than intensity at the end of the day. Like if you just show up and keep putting in that work, and it's one of my strengths. Like I'm the sort of guy that like, I will work out. I don't need a workout partner. I don't need a fancy gym. Like I will just do it because it has so much intrinsic value for me. But I'm wondering for you, like what keeps you coming back to your training?
Yeah, I think I'll give you an example. So I'm working on the bag. I'm getting done doing one of my very intense workouts. There's this kid running on the treadmill because all the treadmills are right there up on the track, and I'm in the corner, and he goes, "Hey, man, are you like training for a fight or something?" And I go, "Nope, just staying dangerous." And he just kind of looks at me, I'm like, and then I realized like that's what I'm doing. I'm keeping my skills sharp. I don't get in fights. I'm in total control. I'm doing that stuff. But there's going to be that moment, like I always tell people, like I want to train for two. If I have to carry one of my kids or my wife down 2 or 3 flights of stairs and across a field or whatever it is in some situation like that, can I do that? Or am I going to have a grabber and die and totally let my family down and not be able to protect them, right? So I have this kind of protector mindset. I've always had it that I need to be that, right? Weapons training, we do all kinds of stuff, and I'm not a nut job, but it's like we have a reason for that. So the fitness has to tie into that. There has to be a level of commitment.
I was going to say, like you are sharpening the spear.
Right. Yeah, it really is. To me, it's so important. And keeping those skills sharp and doing the different stuff. And even the hike yesterday, I had to do that. Like normally 3 miles would be nothing. I was hiking 10 and 20 a day with 65 pounds on my back 10 years ago, right? 10, 12 years ago. So walking was nothing. All day long I could do it. Yesterday, 3 miles about killed me. Like the angle, wait till I wake up in the morning. It's like, get through that. But that's that place, right? We're in a different place. You can't do everything all the time. So if I have to choose now, I'm like, okay, well, I've got skills. Let's keep these skills sharp. Still gets an unbelievable workout. I get a great hour, stay hard, and I can jump rope and I can do things. I'm like, okay, that's what I've accepted now, Jeff. Like that, I'm not going to run. I don't run anymore, because of knee or whatever it is. I'm like, but I can do that and I can jump rope. I can row. I can row a bit now. I used to row a lot. I used to be a competitive rower and stuff, but I can't do it as hard anymore. So you just have to adjust over time. But the important thing is that you're doing something. It's activity, right? We're looking for like.
The important thing is doing something, right?
Yeah.
You got to show up, and that's the consistency piece. Yeah. I mean, there's two things I want to just comment back on. One is, I think you used the word acceptance, right? You got to accept where you're at, right? And like that can be really hard. Accepting certain limitations of just like, man, like I can't do this thing that I used to be able to do, right? But we can't let that acceptance turn into this passive resignation where like, well, if I can't do that, then I can't do anything. Might as well just sit here on my ass. No, like you find ways, and when your life changes, you find ways. I remember when I became a father, right? Like those luxurious, like 2-hour workout times like disappeared, but I'm like, oh, my kid's napping for 20 minutes. Great. I can hit a 20-minute little session here, right? Like you just, instead of looking at this as this obstacle that is insurmountable, you look at it as this challenge of like, hey, how can I adjust and stay adaptable and actually rise to this challenge, right? And it goes back to all people grow through a balance of challenge and support. And, that changes for everyone at different times. I think men in general, like, tend to fall a little bit more on that challenge side, right? Like we need a good challenge to keep ourselves sharp and to keep us growing. And I see also that kind of brings us to this larger conversation of, lack of, kind of rites of passage and rituals for men. I think there's a lot of guys out there looking to be challenged and not knowing where to find that, right? And I think kind of CrossFit came by and the workout of the day, like that was like one, like from a fitness perspective, was like, hey, here's a really good challenge that I can like man up to, right? Or, I'm going to run like a Tough Mudder, or, I did a lot of training with people on Spartan races and, kind of when in that heyday. And I love those sort of things. Like those are good challenges. They tap into some of that kind of more primal, masculine energy. I want to throw a spear and I want to like crawl, and I know you trained as a Marine, right? Like I think that's sort of the epitome of the sort of, in many ways that, that really heroic masculine strength. But even the average guy who's just like, lives in a city and works a desk job, like still has that inside of him and is looking for ways to get it out there. and we don't always have the right outlet for it, and I think that's unfortunate. I feel like a lot of men would do so much better if they had these healthy places where they could challenge themselves. They could challenge themselves with other men. They could do it in a supportive way. Again, that's where martial arts can be an incredible outlet for that. Sports as well, right? But also, sometimes those things can be bad. There's no perfect solution to this.
Yeah, very true. It is the camaraderie, because shared suffering creates the greatest bond. Okay, if you go train with someone, like having a training partner. When I was training my son, took a buddy of his, and I trained the two of them because he wanted to make the Junior Olympics, right? So I'm like, okay, so we took a year, and I got him a training partner. So the kid, you need to train with him, because I knew he'd push himself. He wasn't like better than my son, but he gave everything. I mean, he'll drain the tank every time. I'm like, that's what my son needs. Someone like that, because he will do the same thing. He doesn't quit. And you get a couple guys like that, the stuff they did, what I put them through, was unbelievable. And it was such a joy to watch. And when you see, and they'll never forget each other, because they had that year of shared suffering, just pushing. I had two other guys that got ready to go in the Marine Corps, same thing. We got down to their final week before they're both going in. We're doing 100 burpees per time, and I'm talking real burpees, a full push-up and no touching, right? So the goal was to break 5 minutes, right? I go, you break 5 minutes, you're like world class. Well, one guy, Kenny, 440, 438. Okay, perfect. Michael, his trainer, is going, right? And he's close. I'm like, he's still going to break 5. He didn't beat Kenny, but he's, and he was like a professional ballet guy and all this stuff, but man, he would work out like they were the greatest. And like, he stopped and grabbed his water bottle, and I'm like, what are you doing? He took a shot of water. What? He got a 501. He'll never live that down.
Yeah.
So it's like, I can't believe it. I'm like, dude, we should, but here's guys who are literally working out so hard. The workouts were so intense. Like, it just, being their trainer was like so much joy. I mean, and I know this is kind of nasty, but like Mike would go and he's like vomiting black stuff. He goes, puts it out the door, comes back and gets back into the workout. Okay. Now, some people might not seem right, but dude, I love them that much more. They'll just do anything, right? We just push ourselves to those limits, and just that whole ability to have that, what it's done for my son. Now in the Marine Corps, it's paying just dividends. Same with boxing and everything else, and it's cool to see, but it's part of, like, I don't want to say who they are, because I don't want to say it's like an identity thing, but they understand the value to such a great degree. It's matter of fact, those two guys, one's in like Vermont. Now he's still in the Marine Corps. He became a combat instructor, but he's out there. The other one's out and living here in this town. They do like weekly video workouts together still. That was 11 years ago, 12 years ago. And these guys are still connected, like working out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because that's just who they are. Like, it's part of what they do, and they understand the value of it.
Yeah. I mean, they form that bond. You're bringing me back, man. I'm thinking of the last time I did a 5-minute burpee challenge, and I don't know. I think I've crossed that 100 mark, but now I'm like, maybe I should try that again. But to the point of, shared suffering, breeds camaraderie and companionship and belonging. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. And I think that's a double-edged sword that I've seen go all sorts of ways, and I say that in the sense of, I was in a fraternity and got, kind of like haze, fraternity way, there was a lot of shared suffering with me and my pledge brothers. But like, the guys who were running it were just a couple years older who, and they didn't really know what the hell was going on. Right. It was ultimately, I think, way more destructive than helpful. Right. And so even though we came out of that with that shared sense of bond, like, hey man, we just went through some shit together. I think it was missing this larger context and meaning of like, wait, like, why are we even suffering? Like, what are we trying to accomplish here? Because I think what can happen when you get a bunch of people, in that sort of situation suffering together is like, they're easy to take advantage of. And I think that, you need the people in charge really need to be on point, and they need to be very clear with themselves and with what is the mission, what is the purpose, what are we actually striving for? What is the world that we're trying to create by doing any of this? Because if none of that is clear, then it just becomes kind of suffering for suffering's sake.
Right.
And I don't think that that's helping anybody out.
No, I think that's a really good insight right there. Plus, there's one other thing on that too. All that's correct. Sometimes you get the great training partner and you have those killer months or whatever it is. And then when they're gone, they're separated, you like stop because now you feel you can't work out hard enough without that training partner. So to give an example, I'll use my son. So he wants to go in the Corps. He wants to go in the Marine Corps. He wants to be MARSOC, special operations, all that stuff eventually. But he's like, Dad, you got to train me. I'm like, okay, well, you know what that means, right? That thing, he was going to have a training partner. He couldn't get anyone right now. It's going to be him. I go, you're going to do 3 a days for 7 months till you go into basic, right? He's like, okay, that's what I want. So we do conditioning and strength early, 6 a.m., half-hour break. He runs 6 to 10 hills, 6 to 10 miles. And then in the afternoon, we're in the pool, 5 and 6 days a week. And we have an obstacle course at home I built. We're rope climbing. We're doing all, carrying logs. We're doing the whole thing, crushing it. And like every day he's there because I wanted basic to be a recovery because like you want to go into recon. So after that, so basic will be a recovery because I know what that is. I went through it and it's like, it won't be a problem for you. And it was. It's really good he did that. But now, and then it's continuing and being a top guy. I'm watching all these guys drop because he had built the mental fortitude of training by himself. So it's a different level, right? He's done the group thing. He's done the group and the one guy, the one training partner, then he did all this by himself. Then every day he'd go run. It wouldn't be home, but it wasn't, I'm not going to run today. I don't feel like it. It was always do it. So you kind of watch that and here's the smart thing about what you said. It's the leadership. It's the trainer that has to be responsible. Mm-hmm. I didn't just push him to push him. Every day I knew how much he could do that little bit more. He's doing, 600 yards of bear crawl. Okay. Like doing stuff like that. Go do that every day. You don't do it every day, right? So we break it up. We're doing this stuff with 10 burpees. You go 50 yards, 10 burpees, 50 yards, 10 burpees, and then do that, 10 times. Stuff like that. But every day is how much more can you go? Just a little bit more, but you have to be responsible. Like you're saying. Otherwise it becomes abuse. That's what it becomes.
Totally. And I'm with you.
Mentally,
like one, I want to train with you. Sounds like a ton of fun. And 2, yes, the leader, whoever that is, whether that's your coach or your trainer or the head of the team or your boss, they need to take responsibility, right? Especially when we're dealing with physical stuff. Oh, and I look back and I train people for so many years and these people are showing up and trusting me with their body and their well-being, and even the work, the work I do now, right, is a little bit less physical, but it's the same thing, right? These people are trusting that I'm going to guide them through all of this hard stuff, but on the end, I'm going to be right there with them, making sure that they are actually building themselves back up to a healthier, better place, right? I'm not going to leave them in the muck, or I'm not going to drag them down and have them do hundreds of burpees and just say, see ya, go drink a protein shake, right? No, it's I think that, again, calls for a lot of, you have to have vision, integrity, and that's, I want to say that, everybody out there has that and they do inside, but I often see some people in positions of power that are certainly not really, they're not wielding their power skillfully.
Yeah, I think that's the real point. It's, you have to, as a coach, okay, and we'll speak about this here because it's what we both do, but as a coach, you got to be able to pull out, okay, what they're resisting to give, right? They're going to resist. Everyone's going to resist it, whether it's a trauma issue, right, to get them to address it and but you have to do it like a surgeon, right? You don't just take just start gouging someone's eye trying to get a speck out, right? You got to be real delicate. Right. We're going to get it out, right? So we have to understand where that is individually. And I think knowing you, knowing me as a coach, working with people, okay, as all coaches do, right? We're not just training dogs. All right. So we're working with people and everyone's got they've got their highs, their lows, they've got their limits, right? We're to incrementally take them past their limits and give them new limits, right? Because that's where the change happens. Because there's confidence in there. There's a whole number of different adjectives you can throw in there, that they become by doing that. So I think a huge takeaway from all this, Jeff, is that because people coaching is popular now, right? It wasn't popular when I was younger.
Yeah.
You had a
Especially
sports
the last
coach, but
couple of years, it has
yeah,
exploded.
yeah.
Right?
No one, 30 years ago was doing what you do.
Mm.
There's no such thing. And there was no life coaches. Okay. I'm air quoting, right? I still don't need one. I can quote some other stuff. But, the whole idea that the problem is you have a much larger pool now. You need to know what you're looking for. So let's address that really quick. What does it actually mean? See, who are you? My life coach. No.
I have this sitting on my wall as a reminder of the absurdity baked into the idea of a life coach, right? Like, and
Thank
I
you.
think the term
Yes.
it shoots itself in the foot, and which
Yeah.
is why, like, I don't know, I don't usually call myself a life coach, right? I'm not here to tell you how to live your life in any
Right.
way, right? I
Thank you.
mean, I often refer to myself as an educator, and I actually come from, teaching. I taught for many years. But that's because, I love the etymology of words, right? And the origin of the word education comes from the Latin word educare, which means to elicit, to bring forth. Exactly what you just said of like, hey, it's my job to like pull out of them a little bit more strength, a little bit more stamina, a little bit more insight than they even knew that they had. That's my role here, is to open up those little things and to really, right? And again, that right combination of challenge and support to kind of get that truth out of you, right? And that, guess what? That opens up this potential, right, of this whole new thing. That's where that real development happens.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And that's my point on this. And is like kind of the big umbrella about coaching is I can get people super fit, right? I don't train them how to play football. I get them really fit for football. I couldn't tell you one play to run. I don't even watch football. Okay. I don't watch any sports. Okay. But you can be the fittest, whatever you do. I will make you the fittest. Okay. That was always my thing. Like, no one will get you more fit than I will get you. I did it with whole teams, cross country teams, totally fit, like with doing less and doing the whole thing, right? So we learn ways to do things. So the big point is people need to understand when they're looking for a coach like you, right? They're looking for certain things. I think the importance is they really need to understand what they're trying to accomplish, right? Because if they come to you and say, I want to be a better person, like what are you working with? You have no idea what you're working with. Well, what does that mean? A better person. What are you doing now, right? You got to know this stuff, and you may or may not be the fit. There's people I say, we're not going to work together. It's not going to work. I'm going to scare the crap out of you, and you're going to fold. You're a little too mild-mannered to have me as your coach. I'm a little more assertive. I'm a little more this, and you're not in a place that you can handle that, but there's coaches that'll kill it for you. And you'll still get to the same place, but they're going to take you there differently than I would. Because the way I'll do it, you're not going to make it. And I'm being like brutally honest, but it's true.
Yeah, no, dude, I mean, Rich, I feel like that you've nailed it on the head there, that the most important thing in any coaching relationship is the fit, right? The fit between coach and client, right? Is it a good fit in terms of like the challenges that you're dealing with, the issues that you have, right? And my particular, both, of course, my programs and templates and theories, and I've got all the tools, but like how I deliver them, as you said, right? Like, the tone I use, the energy that I bring has gotta meet you in the right place. And when that, it's like a lock and a key, like when that fit happens, boom, right? That's like growth explodes and that person's potential jump, and that's exactly what I want to see. That's what I do this work, because it's so damn satisfying when you're working with the guy and you're like, it's a good, like, it's working for me, it's working for them, and I feel better off in the process, but to see them just all of a sudden, go from whatever that was, feeling so stuck, right? Whether it's, feeling like, totally ashamed of their eating habits, like, not taking good care of their body, just like, their lifestyle is so out of balance, to then like pulling these things in, and all of a sudden these pieces start clicking in place, right? And they're waking up and they're taking care of themselves and they're cooking themselves a meal, and then they show up to work and then they're crushing it. And then all of a sudden, like, their partner is super happy, or they find somebody that they met the love of their life, and then they get a new, it's just like all of a sudden, it's like this virtuous thing happens. And sometimes it's just like we all just need a little bit of support. We're not meant to go on this journey alone. And again, it's like there's so many smart driven dudes out there. And I'm like, well, you know, if you could do it on your own, why haven't you done it already? Right? Clearly, right. You need something else. And maybe that's a coach or a container or a team, right? But or a tribe, like, but you need something else to help elicit that next stage of your growth.
Yeah, I think the point to that and the validity of what you just said is just look back in your life. Everyone's had someone who supported to help them, coach them, or whatever. And that's when they made the most gains. That's when they were at their best. That's who took them to that. Now, they may have left and stopped and they backslid or did whatever. But the point is, every stage of life, whether it's nutrition or fitness or business, right? Anything, if you get someone to train you, you'll only, it just compresses time. It's exponential growth in time compression. So it's like, why would you, maybe you could do it by yourself. Okay. More than likely not. Even if you could, it's not going to be as good, as fast.
No.
Maybe not as healthy, right? You may get to there and be like completely broken. Okay. Like I did it, but I'll never walk normal again. Okay. So you got to think like, who can get me there and keep me in one piece?
That mindset of like, I can do it all on my own, which is hard. Again, another hard thing, especially for men. I think, you know, we're kind of taught that rugged independence of like, I'm going to man up and I'm just going to like get through this on my own, either because I'm too ashamed to talk about it with somebody else, which is certainly a big piece of it, or it's just like that own sense of pride and competence. You know, we get overconfident. And so, like, you know, we keep trying, but like, you know, just trying harder, going down the wrong path, right? And then you look up and, like you said, you're just worn out and exhausted. And then you realize, you're like, oh, shit, man. Like, I actually wanted to be over there and I'm over here. And so I say this as like an actionable takeaway for people, all right? So whenever you listen to this, right, ask yourself this one question, right? Like, what would my life look like if I focused on like one small change to my diet, right? Like if I were going to change one small thing with my eating, you know, what would my life look like? Okay. And then I'm going to challenge you, right? Like write that down. All right. And I want you to do that every single day for the next week. Just change that one small thing. And guess what? If you change that one small thing a week from now, like you're going to be in a very different place, in a very different mindset. And if you don't change that thing, then call me up. Because that's why, you know, you need a coach. You need somebody to help you figure out why are you not doing the thing that you said you're going to do, right? Because, like, we've all been stuck in those moments, right, where we think, I know what to do, so why can't I do it, right? That's where we need to deal with those internal roadblocks that come up.
Exactly. You set the goal, hey, I'm going to do this, and then you keep pushing it off. I'm going to start on Monday. I'm going to do it Thursday. I'm going to do this, you know. I've got that with, you know, and make that with anything, not just fitness. I mean, everything you do, it's all decisions, right, of when to begin. That's why I'm a big fan of imperfect action, just to begin.
Yes, me too.
Like you said, one little thing, just start,
great,
you know, and that's
great phrase.
So good.
Yeah.
What a great way to wrap this up. Jeff, this has been so awesome. You know, really, really good, just really good, healthy conversation. You know, touch on this stuff for people because whether your business, your life, it's all interconnected. And I truly believe health, nutrition, this fitness level, this is a really, really key element. You can't leave this out of your life because all the money in the world doesn't get you fit. Okay? You know what they say? You can have all the money, then you're going to spend all your money trying to get your health back because you let your health go.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a Dalai Lama or something, but yeah.
Right. Whatever it is, it's not even that. It's way more than that because it's not a matter of am I healthy? Like, I mean, you're not complete. You're not complete, you know, as a man or a woman. You're not complete if you're not pushing yourself physically, challenging yourself in some way, overcoming things, you know, staying strong for your family, for your friends, stuff like that, be able to lead. And we had a little saying, if you're not fit, you're not fit to lead. And fit has multiple meanings. Fit has multiple meanings, not just physically. You have to be fit. Mentally, you have to be fit. If you're going to lead people, and most people listening to this podcast are business owners, right? They're leading people. They're leading companies, right? You need this element. You can't just think that increasing your revenue is the key to success. It's like you got to balance this stuff out. And this this spills over into everything you do. Everything we talked about today will spill over into everything that they do every day. Family, wife, husband, kids, everyone around them, other people who see you, right? There's just that's what it is. It's who you become. So yeah, give this another listen. Even if you're like halfway listening to this and you're hearing this, yeah, like maybe you want to listen to this again, because we hit a lot of really great stuff in this. And on that note, Jeff, how can people get in touch with you? How can they follow you? Maybe they want to talk to you about getting you to coach them, whatever it is, which I'd highly recommend. Okay, the stuff that Jeff was talking about, he's the guy, if it aligns, unless you, whatever that works out to be.
So the best thing, just head to my website, which is jeffsiegelwellness.com. Google Jeff Siegel Wellness, coach, men's coach. I should pop up there. On my website, I've got all sorts of resources, free bundle on building your body confidence, eating better. And then you can set up a, call with me if you feel like, again, this is the right fit for you and where you're at and what you're facing, right? And I just want to acknowledge, like, we are all navigating this complex, crazy world, right? Where like one size fits all solutions just don't work, and you were talking about, completeness. I think that's wonderful. Like, the words that come to mind for me are like wholeness and integrity, right? It's like we need to look at you as a whole person and the systems that we operate within. And then from there, we can create these more adaptable strategies for you, right? And that are both flexible but consistent, right? As you said, like, health interconnects to everything else that you're doing, right? Because if you wake up in the morning and your battery is not charged and your body is not ready, then good luck, right? Good freaking luck in the dad you want to be, the boss you want to be, the friend you want to be, So like, that power all starts with our relationship to ourselves, and then it just explodes out from there.
That is awesome. It's so true. So true. Well, Jeff, thank you for being on the show. This has been great. You know what I've noticed, Jeff? I can't do any guest who does fitness and nutrition for less than an hour. It just doesn't happen.
We could keep going for another hour. But
I know we could. I've just noticed a pattern in my, it's like, it's going to be an hour. Yeah, easy. So I love it. I just think it's done so many great things for me and then you and everybody else. So yeah, again, encouragement. But thank you again, Jeff, for being on. Everybody listening to this incredible STS podcast, it has been awesome, and we'll see you on the next one. And don't forget, revenue feeds the ego, profit feeds the family. So if you want to see how I can show you at least $100,000 in hidden annual profits in less than 3 minutes, and not only show you where, but how to create that 100K in 6 months or less without additional advertising or marketing spend, guaranteed, just go to sharpenthespearcoaching.com. See how truly simple it is. That's sharpenthespearcoaching.com. Do it now.